Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, August 25th, 2023. I am Dave Biddle. I will be joined by Jonah Booker in just a moment. 8 days away from Ohio State season opener. A lot of great stuff to get to when we talk to JBook. I do want to let you guys know this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices. The path forward isn't always clear. We know mental health is very important. So whether you're dealing with decisions around career, relationships, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice it, the easier it gets. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Bucknuts today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Bucknuts. Again, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. All right, let's bring my guy Jonah Booker in now. Let's get to matters of football. As I told you, I wanted to ask. I don't even know what you're going to say. We did our show prep this morning, and I told you I want to ask you a question. What's in your mind? What's the most underreported story so far to come out of Ohio State's camp? The thing that you think Buckeye fans, media are not talking about enough, JBook?
The running back room, Dave. I mean, I feel like that right there is going to be a major key on how this offense operates. We've been hammering home the quarterbacks all off season, especially right now leading up to the season. Who's going to be the guy? That's been a hot topic. What's the offensive line going to look like? Who's going to be your tackles? Who's going to win the starting center job? We've hammered the offensive line. Defense, can Jim Knowles defense get it done? What's the safeties going to look like? What's the corners? But to me, Dave, I look at the running back room as something that hasn't been talked about enough because from all indications, Travion Henderson looks like he is poised to have a monster year, like a bounce back. He's healthy. He has that spring in his step, playing with a little chip on his shoulder. I cannot remember a time in Ohio State history where you have 5 running backs that the coaches feel really good about. And when you're going into a season, you really don't know who your quarterback is going to be, what the passing attack is going to look like. I truly believe they're going to be a run-heavy team first, just to get that quarterback settled. You're breaking in a new offensive line. The last thing that you're going to see is a quarterback out there winging it 35, 40 times a game when you have 5 absolutely thoroughbred horses in the running back room that can start at anywhere in the country. So I truly believe that storyline is something that isn't talked about enough because we know Trey's going to probably be your first guy out there. Now, who is it going to be after that? Is it going to be Henderson? Is it going to be Mayan? Is it going to be Dallin Hayden? Ryan Day went up to the podium and said Evan Pryor and Chip Trainum had outstanding scrimmages. So those guys are going to see touches and they need to be able to get the football. So I'm like, how are you going to have enough footballs to go around for these guys? So that's something that I'm really interested in seeing how that's going to play out.
I guess the good news is, I think typically it would be man, there's almost too many good running backs on this team. When you have 5 guys, it's as you said, not enough balls to go around. But last year they were so decimated by injuries. I think everybody realizes they're going to need all 5 guys probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're in the Georgia game. You got X lining up in the backfield with Mitch Rossi because you were so depleted. I don't think Chip Trainum was healthy at that time, and then obviously Henderson and Mayan, they were both banged up. So going into the season, I just believe that to get that first time starter quarterback settled, to get that offensive line starting to blow people off the football, let's rely on the run game a little bit more so you can get those guys comfortable. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, you got the Cadillac position with the wide receivers, or Urban used to say the Cadillac. Nowadays, you could probably say the Maserati position when you're talking about the wide receivers. But you got all of these high-end, high-profile wide receivers. You got to be able to throw the football. That's great. But I just think those first couple games, let's get the running game started. Because if you remember last year, Dave, the offensive line in the running game just was not clicking at all. They struggled to pick up short yardage. I think a lot of that was also Kevin Wilson with his scheme, being very adamant that he wanted to run stretch. Now that Justin Fry's here, are they going to be able to be more physical, running downhill in a gap scheme where they're just going to say, hey, line up, hat on a hat, let's blow somebody off the football. If we need to pick it up on 3rd and short, we got 5 capable backs that we can throw in there. So let's go ahead and establish the line of scrimmage and just bully people up front. Once that offensive line starts to gel and they start to get into that rhythm, your quarterback's getting into that rhythm. Now we can go ahead and open it up. Those safeties are creeping down into the box because your run game is so prolific. Now that's going to leave Marvin Harrison one-on-one because they're having to rely on the run game. That's leaving Emeka or Carnell or Julian one-on-one on the outside because people are having to cheat up to account for the run game. Think about last year, Dave. The run game was just okay. I felt like teams really didn't respect it enough. They felt that their front 7 could win at the point of attack, so they didn't have to put another guy into the box, an extra man to try to stop the run. If they can get that run game established early on, Dave, this offense is going to be very difficult to stop.
And I thought you were going to answer it quarterbacks. We're not talking about the quarterbacks enough. We've done that plenty, and we're going to do it right now as well. I mean, I get the feeling that this is going to bleed. And Ryan Day pretty much said this on Monday, that this competition, I feel like he knows who the leader is right now. He's just not going to say it. But I feel like the competition is going to bleed into the season. He basically said that both guys are probably going to play against Indiana. He didn't say for sure. What's your gut feeling? Do you think he's just going to pick one guy and he's going to roll with that guy? Or do you think they're going to kind of do what Michigan did last year? I hate to use that example, but Cade McNamara started the first game, then J.J. McCarthy started the second game. I'm not saying exactly like that, but do you think the competition will bleed into the season, JBook?
I do think it's going to bleed into the season, Dave. I think we're going to see a situation that we're going to see both quarterbacks play early on. And I will say this, Dave. I know a lot of people are out there saying, oh, if you don't have if you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback, the old saying. What if both guys are just good? A lot of people always look at it as a negative connotation that they haven't really decided on a quarterback. What if both guys are just making plays and the competition is so fierce that one person really isn't pulling away? I don't necessarily see that as a negative. I personally would love for them to, go ahead and pull the Band-Aid off and say, hey, this is our guy and run with it. But I truly believe that you have 2 very capable quarterbacks that can move this offense up and down the field. When you listen to the coaches, it's not necessarily talking about, hey, this guy's going to need to do a better job getting the team in and out of huddle or getting this team in scoring position. They're talking about intangibles, little things that they're trying to see that can separate the quarterbacks, like, oh, which guy's going to be able to lead the guys in the locker room, which guy's going to be the vocal leader. I have yet to hear one coach say, oh, they're struggling to move the football in practice. They're struggling to do anything against this defense. From all indications, the offense is plenty capable. It's just, okay, pick your poison. Just pick a kid. Let's go with it. But I do believe that they're going to go into the season, and I do believe that both quarterbacks have the talent that whoever they decide, they're going to play at a high level. I just hope we don't get a Cardell JT type of situation, because what did Cardell Jones say, Dave? He said, I really wish that they would have chose a quarterback and just roll with it, because anytime I was in the game, I always felt like I was looking over my shoulder, that any mistake that I made, that my leash was going to be very short. They were going to yank me out of the game for JT. So he really never got comfortable in that 2015 year. Now, the good news, if you're Ohio State fans, you don't have Ed Warner and Tim Beck, those guys at the helm that's making these decisions. You have a major upgrade in the coaching with Ryan Day, Corey Dennis, and Brian Hartline. So I just think that at the same time, I just want the guy that they choose, after you choose this person, that they let them overcome adversity, make mistakes, and roll with it. And I hope Ohio State fans don't start calling for the other quarterback's head as soon as he makes a mistake, because there's going to be growing pains. This team is good enough to withstand first-time quarterback growing pains. They're deep. This is a very deep football team this year.
We got Ken Taco Hut saying we're not allowed to talk about 2015, so we definitely can't talk about Stanley Jackson and Joe Germain, right? Because that was another one where, like, in 96 and 97, I'm sure both those guys were looking over their shoulder at all times. And then Germain finally had the job to himself in 1998, and we saw what he did.
Well, Terrell Pryor and Terrell Pryor's freshman year.
Beckman, yeah.
With Beckman. Beckman was a all Big Ten quarterback. He was looking
over the championship game.
Took him to the national championship game, looking over his shoulder. You talk about Troy Smith and Justin Swift, same type of situation. One quarterback was looking over their shoulder. They eventually settled on Troy, and then off he runs, the following year and wins a Heisman Trophy. But those are some of the things that have plagued Ohio State throughout history is they've had two quality guys. They struggled to really make that tough decision when the moment really lend itself. So I just hope that once they make that decision, let that guy has his bumps and bruises and grow from it, because they're not going to be perfect. Regardless of whoever goes in there, they're going to make mistakes, regardless if it's McCourt or Devin Brown. Okay, learn from it. This is your first time in the trenches. Learn from it and go out there and make a play the next time.
I just gotta say this: 96 still gets on my nerve. That team was so good, and they would have won the national championship. They would have beaten a mediocre Michigan team at home. They went on to beat Arizona State in the Rose Bowl, and they would have finished number one. And Cooper started Stanley Jackson every game that year until the Michigan game. Then he started Joe Germain, and Germain just didn't look right. He was like, that's the first time you're going to start Joe Germain is the Michigan game.
See, I don't
all year.
See, I don't remember the nuts and bolts of that. Like, what was John Cooper's reasoning to pull in Stanley Jackson, like, for the Michigan game? Like, talk about someone who absolutely just got in his own head and say, oh, I'm going to switch my starting quarterback all throughout the season for the Michigan game. Like, do you remember, like, what he said, like, his reasoning was?
I'm trying to remember his reasoning. I remember even a guy like me that was calling for Germain all season, even when I was sitting there, I was a student at the time at Ohio State, and I was sitting there with my buddy, and we saw there was no talk that Germain was going to start the game, I don't believe. I remember thinking, oh, I don't have a good feeling about that. Then, they got up 9-0. They should have been up 21-0, and then the spring slips happened. But, yeah, it was just weird. It was just a weird time to do it. I can't remember exactly how he explained it. Now you have me. I'm not really going to go back and research that, because that's a painful one for me, man. That 96 team was awesome. Orlando Pace finished, I think, 4th for the Heisman that year.
Right.
Orlando Pace. Anyway, let's move on.
I was going to say, before we move on, that was before social media and everything. Could you imagine in today's era, like, hey, I got a starting quarterback all throughout the year, and the week leading up to the biggest game of the year against that team up north, you make a quarterback switch? Oh, my goodness. Oh, man.
He might have announced it before the game. I can't remember now. I've tried to block that game out as much as I can, even though I can't. But I can't remember that specific detail. But, yeah, I do remember for sure that Stanley started every game until the Michigan game. I was like, Cooper was as you mentioned, Cooper was always in his own head with Michigan. It was always something with him. It was always something. He came out saying it was just any other game. Then, he realized he couldn't do that. He was just a mess. 10-1 against Michigan. Unbelievable. All right. Will Carnell Tate actually surpass Julian Fleming at one point? Now, this is something you wanted to talk about when we did our show prep. Do you think Carnell Tate, and this is nothing against Julian Fleming in my book, I think Carnell Tate's just that great. Do you think Carnell Tate will eventually be in the starting lineup, JBook?
I do. And before, I explain why, I'll say this. Julian Fleming is a war daddy, Dave. Great kid, awesome teammate, from what everyone is saying, has done everything the right way, finally healthy. He is a valuable asset to this football team, and I hope Julian goes out there and absolutely balls out. And the one thing that you can say about Julian is he is your ultimate teammate to those guys. He's mentoring those young wide receivers, so nothing but love, nothing but success for Julian. I'll say this, though. Do you want to be good, or do you want to be great? That's the line that if you're willing to cross, because I think, and I truly believe, if you're willing to start Carnell Tate, based off what Marvin Harrison Jr. is saying, you have the opportunity to be great. If we went into the season right about now, if we're going to play, look back, if someone looked at you, Dave, and said, last year at this time, should Marvin Harrison Jr. be starting? You would look around, Adam, and say, are you crazy? What do you mean? Yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. should be starting. We fast forwarded now. The best wide receiver in college football is saying that this kid is better than where I was at this time last year. You have to look at that and say, okay, how high is Carnell Tate's ceiling? Because if Marvin Harrison Jr. game recognized game in those locker rooms, those kids aren't going to go out there to the media and lie. If they see that this kid is absolutely torching our defense, you got to find a way to get Carnell Tate into the starting lineup. And it has zero to do with Julian Fleming. Last year, Dave, the wide receiver room was good with Emeka, Marvin, the guys that subbed in for Jackson Smith and Jigba. They would have been great if JSN was there. It would have taken this offense to another job or to another level. You put Carnell in there, and you're talking about, oh, he is as good as Marvin Harrison Jr. his sophomore year. This offense can just go, Dave. It can go from good to great at the wide receiver room, and you can't deny talent, regardless of seniority, regardless of how long someone has been in the program. If a wide receiver is good enough to play, he should, and he's playing at a level that they believe he can play at, he should get some starting minutes. And it's going to be tough because Brian Hartline, he's had a short rotation when it comes to wide receivers. I do believe top to bottom, this is probably his deepest wide receiver room. So I think a lot of those guys will get some playing time there. The one thing about Marvin and Emeka heading down the stretch, I think they played a lot more than they probably should have. And once you got to November, I think those legs start to get a little heavy. You really saw it in Emeka and Buka. Once he got that month off heading into that Georgia game, he looked like an absolute different wide receiver. So when you got the talent with Brandon Ennis and Julian and X and Carnell, there shouldn't be no reason why they have dead legs come November. But to as far as the show topic, Dave, Carnell Tate, I got to start him. I can't deny greatness if your guys in your room believe that he has the opportunity to be great. And I've had Brian Hartline tell me personally, Dave, that he doesn't care about age. If you're good enough, regardless of age, you're going to play at Ohio State on this offense. So if that's the case, and I'm going to take his word and say it wasn't cap, he wasn't BSing me, then I truly believe that Carnell Tate is going to be someone who is a major, major contributor for this football team. He could be the one that Marvin hands the torch off to once he heads to the NFL next year.
And I'm convinced they're going to need, all those guys, meaning, obviously Marvin and Emeka, but also they're going to need Tate. They're going to need Fleming. They're going to need X. They're going to need all five of those guys for sure. Maybe a Brandon Ennis, maybe a Jaden Ballard. We'll see. But I do believe.
I forgot about Ballard.
I know this is going against, recent history since Hartline's been here, but I'm with you. I feel like, and he's talked about this, I feel like they're going to use a little bit more of a wide receiver rotation. But I always go back to something that Hartline said multiple times is, if I'm going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. or Emeka Egbuka off the field for you, you need to be at least as good as them, unless they're like super gassed or something. So I guess part of me is I'll believe it when I see it, but everything Hartline said himself, Carnell Tate is going to play meaningful reps, period. I wrote the story. That was the headline. Carnell Tate will play meaningful reps this year. So yeah, man, it's going to be interesting, but I think they're going to need all those guys. Somebody's going to get banged up. Hopefully they all stay healthy, but Julian Fleming's still going to have a role in this offense, but I'm with you. I think when we look back at the end of the year, Carnell Tate's probably going to have or will have a more productive season, in my opinion, if they stay healthy. All right, I'll other. Go ahead.
I was going to say this too, Dave. Just touching back on what we mentioned earlier, one of the talking points, and I think it's flown under the radar, is Ryan Day said he's still going to be calling plays early on in the season. I think that's going to be really big for this team here because that right there tells me like, hey, with this quarterback room really not settled yet, we're so deep. I think this is going to allow Brian Hartline to really hone in on that wide receiver rotation because, you're offensive coordinator in title, but in theory, you're still going to be down there on the sidelines. You'll be dialed into, who needs to blow, who needs to go in as far as the wide receiver rotation. So I think that's a good thing for this team because if we're going to get the Ryan Day offensive coordinator that we saw against Georgia, who's hungry, who's fired up, who's showing that passion, I still want him out there calling those plays because he said we're going to be aggressive, I'm going to take his word for it, because if they are aggressive and hungry and nasty, then this offense has the potential to be absolutely ridiculous.
I'm so excited. 8 days away. I see all the comments are saying stuff like that. Like, we can't wait. Imagine next week at this time when we're doing the show, the
Oh,
day
man.
before, game day eve. I mean, I just am so excited. 8 days
Oh,
away. I want to get into some other true freshmen that aren't just going to like play this year, not redshirt, but guys that can actually help the team. We mentioned Carnell Tate. I think Brandon Ennis is another one. Maybe Luke Montgomery if one of the starters gets hurt. Luke Montgomery, so that's been one of the interesting stories of camp, in my opinion. I had him pegged third string guy, and he's now like at least pushing for a starting job. I think Josh Fryer is going to be a really good right tackle, but Luke Montgomery, I think, is a guy that can help this year. Malik Hartford is another one. I'm probably leaving some guys out, but who are some guys you think, get into why? Who are some guys like Ennis, maybe some others that you think can actually help the Buckeyes this year? Hartford and others.
Yeah, I think Malik Hartford, that's the one that I think really has the pathway to seeing the field early as a true freshman. And holy moly, what a great get that he is, Dave. Like, the moment's not too big. And for a kid to come in here and Malik Hartford to be able to be pushing at a place like Ohio State for a starting job. And it's not like the safeties aren't deep. And it's not like the safeties don't have some good talent back there. Malik Hartford being able to be in contention for that starting job, he's going to see the field. So I think that he is someone that will absolutely get some playing time this year. And then I look at Brandon Enos. I want to see Brandon Enos on the punt return, Dave. I think he gives you that wiggle, that burst, that he can be able to flip the field on special teams with his elusiveness. Because I know, and I want to say this, Dave, without being frustrated, Parker Fleming. Why is he talking about Emeka Egbuka being back there returning kicks again? Like, I know Emeka's great as far as punt returns. I think Emeka doing the kickoff returns and stuff like that, I think, that's going to be something. But we've seen it time and time again. Like, do you really need Emeka returning kicks? I feel like they have so much speed and athleticism that you can give these other guys the opportunity to get on the field to make plays. Like, you look at, Noah Rogers, and what did Parker Fleming say? They're looking at Travion Henderson returning kickoffs or something in the meetings or something like that. Like, why are you wasting your time with that? Nobody wants to see Travion Henderson back there returning kicks, a guy who's coming off a foot injury. But Parker Fleming conversation day. We can have a whole nother segment another day about that. But yeah, let's get some. Go ahead.
It was like in the spring when Marvin was returning punts, and people are like, "What's going on here?" He was just like trying to like work on his skills. But yeah, I mean, I'll be surprised if Travion's back there returning kicks. I don't know who it's going to be. I'm kind of hoping it's Evan Pryor. I don't know if he's healthy enough. Maybe they don't want to risk that, especially early. But if Evan's ready to go, I'd like to see Evan back there. Who would you like to see? And is this going to be the first time since the national championship year of 2014 that the Buckeyes return either a kickoff or a punt for a touchdown? Emeka had one last year, but there were 2 penalties on the Buckeyes that got called back. Right. Is this the year that streak ends, my friend?
Hope so. I mean, the special teams have been pretty average over the last couple of years, especially when you got a coach whose only job is to coach special teams. Like, you would think that, hey, if this is your only purpose on the squad, you don't recruit, you're only coaching special teams, that you will probably have the best special team units in all of college football. But Ohio State has really struggled with flipping the football field when it comes to the return yards. It's just getting the right guys out there. Like, oh yeah, like you mentioned, you have Marvin out there returning kicks. Marvin's not going to return kicks. Why are you wasting this man's time out there trying to return kicks when you could be working on getting live reps in with these younger guys who could potentially be the ones who does field punts or field kickoffs out there? Like, I just don't understand what Parker Fleming's doing half the time. But I will say this, Dave, they have so many weapons that, pick your poison. What do you want out there? Do you want a guy who's going to run 22 miles per hour in a straight line, returning kicks on kickoffs? Or do you want a guy who's a jitterbug, who's going to make a lot of people miss what you need at the punt return? They got plenty of guys to choose from. And back to the freshmen, Jermaine Matthews is one that slipped my mind. I think Jermaine Matthews is going to be a guy who's going to work his way into that 2 deep, could probably get some late game reps in there. But it's critical, Dave. And I will say this, and we've hammered it home: got to play the freshmen when it's blowout time, regardless if they're going to make an impact early on in the games. You start to develop those younger guys if you can get them live reps. We're going to, and you guys have done a good job holding the coaches to that. You guys have really, in the media over there in those press conferences, have really done a good job this offseason, really hammering home to Jim Knowles and those guys like, hey, what about these younger guys? And they've been up front so far in the offseason, said, hey, we're going to get a lot of these guys in there and rotating in. We're going to see, because I'm going to keep my eye out on it, because that right there, I believe, really stunted the development of a lot of these true freshmen.
JBook and I are going to finish the show in a moment talking Ohio State recruiting, specifically Brandon Baker, so stick around for that. Our next sponsor that I want to tell you about is AG1, which is a daily nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. If you're like me, you're not always the healthiest of eaters, or if you're like JBook and you are a healthy eater, using a nutritional supplement can go a long way, and AG1 is the best product in the field. It has everything you need, so it can replace your multivitamin, your probiotic, or whatever else you use. I have started using this product. I've noticed a spike in my energy, and I just feel better overall. I'll tell you guys, I was skeptical of the taste of AG1 before I tried it, because AG1 comes as a green powder. You mix it with water, but the taste is good. So they definitely have a customer in me, and I recommend it to you guys. And because of the Bucknuts Morning 5, you can get some free stuff. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/bucknuts. That's drinkag1/bucknuts. Check it out. We're also going to check out what JBook thinks about Brandon Baker. I'm just going to put you on the spot, my friend. What is your gut feeling? Are the Buckeyes going to land the #1 offensive tackle in the country, Mr. Brandon Baker?
I think he goes to Texas. Gut feeling, Dave, right now. I think Ohio State's right up there. I believe that Justin Fry and the Ohio State coaching staff, they have done everything that they can. He loves it from all indications. He loves Ohio State. He loves the coaches, loves the recruits and stuff. I just think that Texas has that slight edge. When you're dealing with that oil money, Dave, there are no ends to their means there. They can spend a ridiculous amount of money. I know Ohio State, they're doing everything they can NIL-wise, but when you're talking about that oil money, it's just a whole different ball game here. I know Steve Wilfong on 24/7, he did his whip around today. This morning released a video, and he was talking about Brandon Baker, said that he has Texas with a lead right now on Brandon Baker, but also mentioned that he would not be surprised if Ohio State ends up winning this battle. But as of today, it sounds like Texas has a slight edge. He got couple official visits coming up to Oregon, Nebraska right now. So I would say keep pushing, man. If you can even try to get this kid on the campus, because I don't think he's really indicated when he's supposed to be verbally or committing to a school. They just say in the fall sometime. If you can try to get him back on the campus, just kind of rekindle that love, that flame that he had after that official visit, because it's been a while since he's been on campus. And I'll say that because 2 months in recruiting is a while in today's era. But I just think Texas right now, but keep fighting for him all day, every day. And then also keep fighting for Jordan Seaton, the offensive lineman out of Washington, D.C., who's going to be taking a visit to Ohio State in October. I think they have a legit shot there. So just keep pushing for both of those guys, because once again, Dave, if you can land at least one of those guys, it takes the offensive line recruiting from good to an absolute great class.
JBook is always at a great level. Great stuff out of Jonah Booker. Thank you very much, JBook. Thanks to all of you. We appreciate it very much. Hope everyone has a great day and a great weekend.